Welcome to Efiwe, excellence without stress. Hello guys, welcome to Efiwe once again, excellence without stress. That's our plan here, is that everybody should be excellent without much stress. Good. So today, look at this picture. This picture, if you stay in Lagos, you know what it refers to. It is Danfo, and what they do basically is transportation. They transport people from one place to another. And that's what we're exactly looking at today. Transport system. In our first class, we talked about the organization of life, from cell to tissue to organ to system. And then the systems form the organisms, right? So today we're looking at transport system, guys. I'm Dr. Omokunle, and I'm so happy to be here today. I hope you're going to enjoy this class as much as we're going to enjoy talking about it. Let's go. So what's the introduction? Animals need to take in food and oxygen from the external environment because these things are needed. Food is needed for energy. Oxygen is needed to break down the food so that the cells can have energy to do everything. You need energy for everything, to move, to reproduce, to make stuff for the cell. Everything that the cell does, it needs energy to do it. Also, plants also need to take in the raw materials needed to carry out photosynthesis, the way they make food, as well as other mineral nutrients from the soil like phosphate and even oxygen from the external environment. So the point is that we need stuff from the external environment, both animals and plants. But apart from needing stuff, like in the case of animals, as we said, needing food and oxygen, plants needing raw materials like carbon dioxide and water to carry out photosynthesis, as well as other mineral nutrients and even oxygen too, just like animals. Let me point out here, both plants and animals take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide during respiration. Okay, and we're going to talk about respiration in another class. But plants also take in carbon dioxide during photosynthesis to make food. Good, right? So these are the differences. Some people mistake it and confuse themselves. So apart from taking in these things for food and energy, both animals and plants also have to get rid of waste products from their bodies to the exterior or to the external environment. So you can see, you need minerals, nutrients, oxygen. Animals and plants take this all in, but they also need to give out waste products from the metabolic processes that happen within the cells. You need to pass out waste products. If you don't pass out waste products, what will happen? The cell will probably die or burst or something will happen bad. Good. So let's talk about surface area to volume ratio. Why is this important? This is important because of diffusion. Okay. And so, for example, this is just describing that as the surface, if you look at this this table here, as the surface area increases and the volume also increases, you can see here that, so what this is describing basically is cells that have large surface area to volume ratio, they are able to diffuse more. They're able to go through diffusion more. So for example, an amoeba is just a unicellular organism. It has just one cell, and the surface area to volume ratio is very high. Okay, I don't want to bore you with a lot, but just know that the surface area to volume ratio is very high in an amoeba, and so that's why diffusion is very, very easy, right? But in a multicellular organisms like humans, that we are complex and we have many cells, diffusion is not as easy. So the point is that the more the volume increases, the more difficult it is to go through diffusion. So as the size of the amoeba increases, the surface area to volume ratio decreases, and because it decreases, then diffusion is no longer workable, because diffusion majorly works when the surface area to volume ratio increase. So listen to the point here. When the surface area / the surface area to volume ratio, when it decreases, diffusion is not good. And as size of any organism increase, it usually decrease. Okay. So the ability of the amoeba to exchange materials in a given time is related to its surface area, I've said. So the larger the surface area, the larger the ability to exchange materials through diffusion. But as the organism gets more complicated, it becomes harder to exchange materials through diffusion because the surface area to volume ratio reduces. So this is it. Amoeba surface area to volume ratio very high. But as it gets bigger, it reduces. As it gets to multicellular organisms like humans, it reduces so much. And so that's why diffusion cannot work for us. But it works for all these unicellular organisms, right? Guys, let's move on. So what happened after then? Since organism needed many cells, many tissues and all, there was an evolution of transport system. So we start with small multicellular organisms like the hydra and the flatworm. What they do? They increased their surface area to volume ratio by developing structures such as the gut. That is the gut is the digestive system that provide extra surface for material exchange. So what they do basically is so the gut was created in such a way as to provide much more surface area so that exchange of materials can happen. Unlike the amoeba, when it is just the cell membrane, now you have a gut, that line. So you see plenty surface. And this is it in the picture. Plenty surface area so that it can provide extra surface for material exchange. But the point is that this organism could not still go beyond a certain size, because as size increases, as I said, the process of diffusion becomes a limiting factor. And so it prevents development of larger bodies. So diffusion that works in amoeba, that works in this hydra and flatworm, cannot work in complex organisms like humans or complex plants. So we need more sophisticated transport system rather than just simple diffusion. So as we said, in the hydra and flatworm, all the body cells are very near the material exchange surfaces, so it just diffuses easily. When the substance when the fluid comes near to the cell, the oxygen just moves in through diffusion, and the waste products moves out through diffusion. So diffusion is only efficient over distances of 1 millimeter or less. It becomes very slow and inefficient as distance between the body cells and the exchange surface increases. So that's why in humans we can't use this simple mechanism of just diffusion alone. No, we need transport system that will transport things over the entire body. And so good. Let's move on to transport in animals. We have looked at transport in unicellular organisms like amoeba, simple diffusion. Hydra, flatworm is still by diffusion, but they have like a gut that increases surface area so that things can diffuse more. And the organism is bigger than amoeba. Of course, amoeba is a microscopic organism. You can't see it with your naked eyes, right? Good. Let's move to transport in animals. So what do you want to say about transport in animals? So what are the main materials that are transported? Digested food. When you eat, the food goes into your intestine. It is digested down. It needs to be transported from that point. So transport comes because things need to move from the point when they are to where they are needed. So digested food, water, and other nutrients, they need to be transported. Oxygen comes in through the lungs, needs to be transported to all the cells of the body so that they can respire, they can create energy from food. Because respiration is the use of oxygen to break down food for energy. So oxygen needs to be transported from the lungs to every cell. The cell, after metabolizing, after breaking down food, after doing various stuffs, they are secreting products such as carbon dioxide, urea, and water that needs also to be transported out of that cell. Transport is needed. Then hormones, enzymes, they are also transported. So let's look at features of a transport system. The first thing that a transport or a circulatory system or a transport system, we'll use it interchangeably, needs is a circulatory fluid. And in most animals is usually blood. So you need a circulatory fluid and you need a pumping device or a heart to drive the fluid around the body. So you need the pumping device, the heart, you need the circulatory fluid, what would contain everything that you're pumping around, and then you need also a system of vessels connected to the heart, which blood or fluid can, circulate through. So that's what we refer to as vessels or the blood vessels, right? So here's the heart pumping, boom, boom, boom. Every time you have the vessels. The blue ones are the veins that carries blood. So this is it. The heart pumps blood from the arteries, these red ones, to every cell in the human body. The cells are happy. They're taking the oxygen, taking the nutrients, use it for how they like, and then these veins now carry the blood back into the heart. So it continues like that. So you need three major things: the circulatory fluid or blood, the heart, which is the pumping device, and the vessel. Good. Let's move on. So there are two types of circulatory system that we should know in animals. There's the open system that is found majorly in insects, phylum Arthropoda, and mollusk, phylum Mollusca, right? Like snails. So the heart just pumps blood into open spaces called the hemocoels. You see? So this is an example. Heart comes from here, pumps blood into the hemocoels, and it just baits the cells around it, and there's exchange. It's called open circulatory system. There's no vessel, there's no vein, there's no artery surrounding the cells. It is just pumps into open space. The cells take what they need and then flows back into the heart. So this is like an open circulatory system, and it is easy because the animal is small. It is not going to be efficient for bigger animals like human beings. I know, but it is used not in insects and mollusk. Insects, phylum Arthropoda. This is a grasshopper and mollusca. Yeah, closed circulatory system. This is what we operate in humans. So the blood is contained within blood vessels. Unlike in open, when it is just pumped into open spaces called hemocoels, Haemocoels. Here it is pumped in blood vessels. So blood vessels carry blood away from the heart, and I've described this. So what carries blood away from the heart is what? Artery. They divide into smaller vessels called arterioles. These smaller vessels here, this is just a simplified diagram. But as it goes on this is the open circulatory system. This is the closed one, artery. From the artery, they divide into smaller arterioles, then into branch-like capillaries. So when they reach the cells, they divide into capillaries, right, which are very small and fine-like. And then this is where the diffusion happens within the cell and the blood vessel. Oxygen and nutrients moves from the blood vessel into the cell, and then the cell also gives its waste product, gives out carbon dioxide, and then it moves back into the venules, these smaller venules, back into the major vein, back into the heart. So that's the closed circulatory system. So note, from the heart to the arteries to the arterioles, which are smaller arteries, to the venules, which are smaller veins, to the veins, which are normal big vein, and then back to the heart. Good. All right. So we've talked about transport in insect like grasshopper. We have said the body cavity consists of a network of just blood-filled spaces called the hemocoel, and the internal organs of the insects are usually in these spaces, and the diffusion just happens there. The cells take what they need, and all. Good. So, yeah, this is just still describing what happens in the open circulatory system. That muscles attached to the heart chambers make the heart contract and relax rhythmically. So this is the heart. It pumps out blood, one direction. The blood flows like this. The slits close. There's a slit here that closes so that blood doesn't flow back. It flows like this into the hemocoel. Then the heart relaxes, and then blood flows back like this from the chambers. After it has beat the hemocoel and the organs, it flows back, and then the heart pumps again. So it's like pumps, the cells use it, and then comes back. That's what happens. There are valves between the heart chambers ensure that blood flows forward towards the head. So I said it earlier that there's a valve here that closes off this point. So when heart pumps, only in one direction. Good. Okay, so the important thing to know about the open circulatory system is that oxygen is not transported by the blood, but by network of air tubes. So you can see all these arrows, they are air tubes. So the blood here is colorless. It is not red. Unlike ours that is red, because ours contains hemoglobin, this one does not contain hemoglobin. So the red pigment that is needed to transport oxygen is hemoglobin in humans. But in open circulatory system found in insects and mollusks, the blood is colorless, and oxygen is through air tubes, so they get oxygen directly, right? But it's good to know that the open circulatory system is an inefficient one. It's not very functional because it can work only in very small, small insects. That's why they cannot develop that much. So it is adequate in an insect simply because an insect has a well-developed system of air tubes for transporting oxygen to all parts of the body. So there are air tubes that surround the insect on every part so that, they can easily just get oxygen. So when we say air tubes, we mean oxygen. So what the blood just does, which is colorless blood in the hemocyl and the tubes, is just to carry out nutrients and all. Yeah, so let's move to the vertebrate circulatory system, guys. So all vertebrates have closed circulatory system, and by closed we mean the blood flows in vessels, unlike the open circulatory system that we discussed earlier, found in insects and mollusks. So what do we see in the closed circulatory system? They have a well-defined muscular arch that lies ventrally in the body. We mentioned here that there's also an arch here, but here it lies ventral. That is, it is in front of the body, like when your heart is pumping. If you put your hand on your chest now, you can see your heart doing doom, doom. You can feel it almost. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. We have mentioned it earlier. So arteries carry blood from the heart to every cell of the body, and then veins bring back the blood to the heart. So the closed circulatory system happens in vertebrates and even some phylums like phylum Annelida. You know what phylum Annelida is and the organism there. All right, so this is single circulation, guys. In single circulation, so in the closed circulatory system that we are discussing today, there is single and double circulation. So in the single circulation, it is found in fish. In single circulation, the heart is divided only into two main chambers, an atrium and a ventricle. So the atrium is the upper part, and the ventricle is the lower part of the heart. You can see. So this is it. Atrium is the lower part. Ventricle is the upper part. So what happens? Blood from the general body circulation enters the atrium. It enters like this. From the atrium into the ventricle. Then from there, just pumps it out. It goes like this. So it's single circulation, just one way, right? So there's a valve between the atrium and the ventricle. There's always a valve, please note. Even in the open circulation, there was a valve in the grasshopper, as we see. In single circulation, which is found mostly in fishes, there's a valve here so that blood doesn't flow back into the atrium. This is the atrium, this is the ventricle. Blood flows only in one direction. So atrium pushes it out, the valve closes. Blood moves from ventricle to the capillaries in the gills. So the reason why single circulation also works for the fish is that they get their oxygen from the gills of the fish. Okay, so capillaries, then moves around the body. Good. So as we have said, the blood is propelled towards the gills, and the aorta, which is the biggest vessel, branches into arterioles and capillaries at the gills. This is it. These are the arterioles, these smaller arteries. Then it forms capillaries here. So this type of circulation, as we said, is known as single circulation, and it is found in fishes one way. Atrium to ventricle to the body, back to the atrium. Single. Double circulation, which is what happens in mammals like human beings. So what is double circulation? It's a process in which blood passes twice through the heart in one complete circle. So unlike the fish that has single circulation, we have double circulation. So it is found in birds and mammals. Mammals like we, apes, can mention mammals. We have done that in a class. So the heart is divided into 4 chambers. So in single circulation, please note, the heart is divided into 2 chambers alone, atrium and ventricle. But in double circulation, the heart is divided into what? 4 chambers. So this is the right, this is the left. So you can see the right is blue, the left is red, right? So there's the right atrium, which is on top, the right ventricle here below, the left ventricle, and then the left atrium. So making 4 parts of the heart. And the movement of blood is divided into 2 parts, which is the systemic and the pulmonary circulation. So as we have said, mammals have a rapid and efficient transport system, and the main features of this system, as you can see, the blood is the circulatory fluid. There's also a lymph. The lymph assists the blood also in moving substance between the intercellular fluid. Lymph and intercellular fluid. And we said the chamber of the heart here is 4. The arteries, veins, capillaries, and a double circulation. So let's just look at the blood. So in every average adult, there's about 5 to 6 liters of blood, average 5.5 liters of blood. Blood consists of liquid plasma, which is about 90 something percent water, in which float a mixture of blood cells and nutrients and other things, right? So plasma, as we said, is just what you see in blood is just plasma, which is about 95 to 98%, and then blood cells. So the plasma is just a pale yellow liquid made up of mainly water. Many substances are dissolved in it, you see, like plasma proteins, antibodies, hormones, enzymes, gases, salts, even digested food, waste material. So it's carrying this thing. That's what transportation is about. Carrying and moving things from one place to another. So plasma is the liquid. It's made up of mostly water, but then it has many of these things that are in it. Apart from plasma, the other thing is the blood cells. Blood cells. We have 3 types of blood cells: the red blood cell, the white blood cell, and the platelets. So red blood cell is the one. That's it in the picture. They call it biconcave or disc shape. It looks like disc. It has no nucleus, guys. You know, we said animal cells and plant cells have nucleus. These red blood cells have no nucleus. All they do is transport oxygen. There are about 5 million red blood cells in 1 cubic millimeter of blood. Note, a mature red blood cell doesn't have nucleus, but all that is the cell is this oxygen carrying pigment called hemoglobin that makes it red, which makes our blood red. You see, it is very plenty, about 5 million in just 1 cubic millimeter of blood, and that's why our blood is red. And this is the culprit. This is what does the job of carrying oxygen everywhere in the human body and in the closed circulatory system as we have it. Red blood cells, also called erythrocytes. So this is it. The hemoglobin is what is contained in the red blood cells that makes the main function of the red blood cell is to transport oxygen from the lungs to the body cells. As we said, oxygen coming through the external environment. You breathe the oxygen in, as I just did now. It enters your lungs, and then the capillaries in your lungs, the oxygen will diffuse from the alveoli of the lungs into the blood. The red blood cells grabs the oxygen, right? Then it is carried to the heart. Then from the heart, it is pumped into all the body. So that, the cells can get oxygen and respire. They can break down food and get energy. Energy is needed by cells. And that's the entire thing. Yeah, apart from the red blood cell, we have the white blood cells. These ones are much larger. They have nucleus, right? So white blood cells have nucleus. Red blood cells, no nucleus. There are several types of white blood cells. You have things like the basophils, the neutrophils, the eosinophils, right? But don't disturb yourself about that. What you should know is that they can be put into 2 main groups. Granulocytes, because they have granules in their cytoplasm, and agranulocytes, because they don't have granules in their cytoplasm. So what white blood cells majorly do is to defend the body against diseases, against organisms that want to cause infection. White blood cells are the ones. They can either produce antibodies or they can even eat the organism up, what we call phagocytosis. White blood cells, leukocytes, they are the second types. The third ones are platelets. What are platelets? They are tiny irregular cell fragments. They are also non-nucleated, right? Non-nucleated means they don't have nucleus, just like red blood cell. And they are formed in bone marrow cells, just like the other blood cells. Red blood cells too is formed in the bone marrow, and also white blood cell. What they do, they produce an important factor which initiates the blood clotting process. So platelets, anytime you hear platelets, remember blood clotting. The process of blood clotting, so that blood is not lost when you injure yourself or whatever. Great. So what are the functions of blood? Carrying out 2 important functions. Number 1 is what we are talking about, transport, carrying various substances from one part of the body to another. Number 2 is that it protects the body against disease-causing microorganisms. Like what we said, the white blood cells, what they do, right? Good. So transport, red blood cells transport oxygen, other nutrients are transported in the plasma. We said the blood consists of the plasma and the cells. Plasma transports everything else, hormones, enzymes, digested food, and all. The red blood cells transport oxygen, and the white blood cells, we said, it protects the body against disease-causing microorganisms. So you're good. Yeah, we already said the transport of oxygen happens through the red blood cell from the lungs to all the cells of the human body. So hemoglobin is this substance. This substance, hemoglobin, is what gives the red blood cell its red color. It has a very high affinity for oxygen. It likes oxygen. It's looking for oxygen. So immediately it gets to the lungs and it sees oxygen. It quickly combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. So this is oxygen and hemoglobin together, which gives it the bright red color that shines. So the oxygen is then transported back to the heart, and the heart now pumps it to the body through the capillaries, and the cells are very happy to take in oxygen and taking food. So they were taking oxygen from the red blood cell. They were taking food from the plasma, like digested. When I mean food, I mean digested food particles, glucose, amino acids, fat and oil, fatty acid and glycerol. Yeah, that's the what the cells take to then grow, to repair themselves, to make whatever they want to make. A lot happens in the cell. Yes, so apart from the blood, we also talked about this intracellular fluid. So intracellular fluid just means that, this is a cell, but there are fluids that surround this cell. Okay, so arterioles branching from the arteries divide further to form capillaries, and the blood in the capillaries at the arteriole is at high pressure. So this is what we are talking about. This is the blood capillary, right? This one. This is the artery. So blood is coming from the heart like this through the artery. It's pumping well, and then it moves into the capillaries. There's high pressure here. So what happens is that this high pressure then pushes some of the blood into the intercellular space, this white space. These are cells, so you can see some fluid then gets here. That's what we said. This high pressure causes plasma, most dissolved substances, and some white blood cells to filter out between the cells in the capillary walls into the intercellular space. So intercellular space is the space between the cells. So some stuff escape through these capillaries, which they are very thin walled. So it can just escape through before it goes back to the veins. The blood continues. So you can see dissolved substances and even some white blood cells. They can enter here. So you have the intercellular space that contains fluid, and that's where the lymph system comes in. You see, the lymph then carries some of the excess fluid out and then takes it back into the blood. Yeah, so we are talking about the lymph now. So the plasma that filters out and occupies this space is known as the intercellular tissue fluid. As we said, it contains water, oxygen, food, and hormones that came out of the blood capillaries. So if these things are not transported back into the blood, they can get to be excess there and cause problems. So they are usually transported back through the lymphatic system. So what this lymphatic system does is to return blood back into the blood vessel. So what this intercellular fluid does is that it bathes the cells. So when the dissolved nutrients and hormones diffuse out, it now surrounds the cell, and then because they are now closer to the cell, the diffusion process can now take place. Remember, in the open circulatory system, the fluid comes into the hemocoel and just bathes the organs, and then diffusion takes place. But in the closed circulatory system, it escapes through the capillaries, baths the cell in the intercellular fluid, and then the cell cannot take what they need. So the blood in capillaries at the velum head contains mainly plasma proteins and little water. Hence, it is highly concentrated. You should also know that. Yes, so as I said, some of the intercellular fluid is reabsorbed back into the blood in the capillary end of the venous, because as it's going like it's going back, some fluid will be reabsorbed in a process known as what? Osmosis. But sometimes the fluid remains in the intercellular fluid, and it has to be taken by lymphatic vessels. These greenish vessels, they take the excess intercellular fluid off, and then they now join and take it back into the circulatory system. Human heart, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The human heart is just about the size of a fist. Like if I do like this, I'm doing my fist. I hope you can see, right? And it weighs about 300 grams. It is muscular. It's always pumping. It lies in the chest, just behind the breastbone. So it has a layer. It has something that covers it called the pericardium. It's 2-layered, and the space between this layer is filled with fluid called the pericardial fluid. Right? It's always pumping. What this fluid does is that so that there will not be too much friction. between the layers of the membrane that covers it, called the pericardium. Note that. So to carry out this hard work, the heart has special muscles called the cardiac muscle, and they contract and relax rhythmically, like boom 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 boom. If you listen to anybody that you yell loop doop loop doop, so they contract together and relax together. And to work hard and continuously, the oxygen and nutrients, they need a good supply of blood, because these muscles, they are also cells. As I said, muscles are tissue, and they have cells that need supply of blood and oxygen. The blood will carry nutrients to them so that they can work well. And so this is supplied by the coronary arteries and veins. Please note. So note that the coronary arteries and veins are the vessels that supply the heart itself, the heart muscles. Okay, while the hepatic portal vein is a vein that carries blood from the digestive system to the liver. Okay, so from the digestive system straight into the liver, hepatic portal vein. And this is the only vessel that starts as the capillary and end in a capillary. We already defined capillary as anywhere there's an organ, you find capillaries, because there has to be exchange of substances, as we have described earlier. So the hepatic portal vein is the vessel that moves blood from the digestive system to the liver. Because after absorption takes place in the digestive system, when glucose is absorbed, when digestion has taken place and all, it has to be absorbed into the blood, right? So when it's absorbed into the blood, the hepatic portal vein then takes it into the liver. The liver will now double check, what's in this blood? Is it good enough for me to release it to the entire system? And then it does release it. So please note those two important vessels: the coronary arteries and veins, they supply the heart. The hepatic portal vein carries blood from the digestive system first to the liver, capillary to capillary, right? So the heart has 4 chambers. I've said this earlier: right atrium, right ventricle, right atrium, left atrium, left ventricle, right? Good. The 2 upper thin-walled atria, or auricles, and the 2 lower thick-walled ventricles. So the ventricles are thicker because they're the ones that pump blood out. You see, left ventricle pump blood. See this place? Pumps blood through the aorta to the entire body. Right ventricle pumps blood through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. I'm going to describe all these things for you guys. So what happens? What's the process by which the human heart works? First thing is that the pulmonary veins. These are the pulmonary veins. Yeah. They carry blood. This blue pulmonary veins. These are the pulmonary veins. I don't know if you can see this yellow structure here by the side here. Good, you can see. Good. So the pulmonary veins, they bring bright red oxygenated blood from the lungs. So when you take in oxygen, like I just took in oxygen now, the oxygen diffuses into the lungs capillaries, right? And then the pulmonary vein now carries it into the left. You can see left atrium, left ventricle. You can see this valve. It's called the atrial valve. But blood will be pushed into the left ventricle. Then from the left ventricle, it is pumped directly into the aorta and into the rest of the body. Oxygenated blood. So that one contains oxygen. The cells are happy. They're taking out the oxygen. Then the blood now moves from the rest of the body back into the right atrium, right? To the right ventricle. And then it is pumped back through the pulmonary artery into the lungs for it to be oxygenated again. So it happens like that continuously. It's also important to know that the openings of the veins in the auricles are controlled by rings of muscles. Okay, so there are some muscles here that control this valve that make sure that it's just one direction. Like when blood comes in from the atrium, it goes into the ventricle. If the ventricle pumps blood out, it doesn't go back into the atrium. Same with this one too. Ventricle pumps blood out, it doesn't go back into the atrium. So note the left ventricle pumps into the aorta, the right ventricle pumps into the pulmonary artery. So that's why they usually say that all arteries carry oxygenated blood that has oxygen. Pulmonary vein comes from the lungs, enters the left atrium, enters the left ventricle, has a lot of oxygen, pumped out into the aorta, right? Into the rest of the body. The aorta has many arteries that just supplies everywhere. So it carries only oxygenated blood, except the pulmonary artery that carries deoxygenated blood without oxygen again, because it carries it from the right ventricle into the lungs. So let me say it again. All arteries carry oxygenated blood except the pulmonary artery. And also, all veins carry deoxygenated blood except pulmonary veins. Good. So you can see pulmonary veins, it carries blood back into the left atrium, but it is oxygenated blood. Listen to that again if you have to, so that you don't make mistake. So we said the right auricle opens into the right ventricle. We have said this opening is guided by the tricuspid valve. Tri means three cuspid. It has three flaps. So what this does is that it prevents the backflow of blood. When the right ventricle wants to, we said the right and left ventricle, they are muscular. So when they pump, they usually pump together. Boom. We want the blood to only go through these pulmonary artery, only go through this aorta. So these valves, 1, 2, 3. There are 3 valves here. These valves prevent the backflow of blood into the right atrium, but it goes only one way. Great. So yeah, we have described everything here. So good, guys, we have talked about the transport in animals majorly, as you can see, and we have even talked about like how the human heart works in mammals, like we humans, to pump things all around. Let's basically talk about transport in plants, and then we're good. So for simple plants like algae, materials enter or leave the cells in its body just by simple diffusion. Okay, so within the cell itself, materials are distributed just by the streaming of the cytoplasm everywhere. Things are just moving around, and everything is good. But in higher plants, there are special conducting tissues known as vascular tissues that carry out transport. Just like in animals too. We said in amoeba, diffusion is okay. You can just take in what it needs, take out what it needs. In simple plants too, like algae, they can do that. But when it becomes complex, like a plant, a big plant, or a plant that grows, or a flowering plant, they need transport systems. These ones, they are known as special conducting tissues. They are known as vascular tissues. So, what do we need to transport around in plants? It's almost similar to what we said in animals too. So, this is doing photosynthesis. Light is used to make food, sugar in the plants. Oxygen is given out, carbon dioxide is taken in, water is given out. You can see water moving from the roots out. So the major materials transported within plants are the gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen, water, mineral salts. There are minerals in this soil that needs to be transported up for the body of the plants. Manufactured food. So when the food is manufactured in the leaf, it needs to be transported down, because all these people too, they need food. The root needs food. The stem needs this food to survive. And also essential chemicals like hormones and pigments. You can see plant saps, cell saps, and cytoplasms are the main transportation medium. So note this. Transportation medium in animals is mostly blood. In the insects, we said it's colorless. In mammals, we said it's colored red because of hemoglobin. In plants, it's plant saps, cell saps, and cytoplasm. They are the main transport medium. So plant sap has fluids. It's a general term which includes the fluids in the vascular tissues and lattice tube. And this cell sap has about 98% also water. But it also has some solutes that makes it ability to transport water and other nutrients. So we have talked about all these nutrients that need to be transported. Sugars, proteins, amino acid, lean, mineral salts, all these organic acid, these pigments. Okay, so it's good to know that unlike the blood in animals, plant saps tend to be acidic. And you see, there's a lot that needs to be transported in plants too. So let's move straight to the vascular tissue. So what are these tissues that help the plants in moving things up and down? There are 2 major ones you need to know: xylem and phloem. Xylem and phloem. Okay, so the movement of substance is known as translocation in plants. So vascular tissues are grouped together in bundles within the plant body. Each bundle is known as a vascular bundle. So you can see that in each body, along this body of the plant, the vascular tissues are grouped together. This xylem and phloem, they are grouped together, working together to translocate things, food and water everywhere. Please note, phloem, whenever you hear phloem, this pH, LOEM, is food it transports. And you can see the arrow goes like this. So food transportation, phloem. Just know xylem, majorly water and other nutrients. So you can say these bundles are arranged in patterns from the stems to the leaves to form even the roots, stems and leaf form a mass distribution system. So xylem and phloem. We have said there are two major ones. So xylem conducts water and minerals from the roots. The roots are in contact with water and minerals, and then it conducts it up, right? Phloem conducts manufactured food. Food is manufactured in these chlorophyll pigments in the chloroplast of the leaf, manufactures food, and then it is translocated down to the rest of the plant, because this stem too also needs food, but it is made in the leaf, so it needs to be moved down. This root too needs food. In case you don't know, the root doesn't make food. All the food is made in these leaves, and so it needs to be translocated down. Good. So we're just talking here about the absorption of water. Is through the root hairs that absorb soil water. So you can see when you look at the roots, there are now smaller root hairs that can take in water from the soil. So the cell sap of the root hair has a solution of higher concentration than the soil solution. So water just moves in by osmosis. And this is exactly what happened. Water moves in by osmosis into the root hairs, then is moved up the plants, and all the various parts of the plants have enough water. Also, mineral salt also happens through the same method. The concentration of ions in the cell sap of the root cell is high, while that of the soil solution is low. So for this one, it is active transport that is involved. Unlike the former one we talked about, which is water, that happens through osmosis. This one, because the plants actually have even more minerals than the minerals, so osmosis cannot happen here, or diffusion. It has to be active transport. Don't let me bother you. So transport of water in the xylem tissue. So when this water has been gotten from the root hair, as we said, through osmosis, the mineral salts through active transport, what happens next? Three things. There's the root pressure that we have talked about, the capillary action, and the transpiration pull. So this root pressure and capillary action conducts water through from the root cells to the xylem under pressure. So as a result of accumulation of water in the roots, because of continuous absorption, the root pressure causes water to move across the root cell and up the xylem vessels to a certain height. So there's a lot of, as we said, osmotic pressure from the root cell that is drawing water into the roots and up into the plant. And also the capillary action that we discussed. So capillary action is that you can imagine if you have kerosene, and you have seen these wicks that they use in stoves. If you put it inside kerosene, what happens? The kerosene rises, like it is soaked up, right? That's exactly what happens with the plants too, and that's what we call capillary action. The water just moves in the xylem, right? It moves up, capillary action. So root pressure because of the cell sap, capillary action. Last one is the transpiration pull. So most of the water that is absorbed by the root of the cell moves up the xylem vessel to the cells of the leaf. So the leaf then, evaporates water out and it cools the plants. That happens through the stomata of the cell. So transpiration pull also happens. It evaporates into, just outside of the leaf, and this is an energy process, okay? And it happens from the surrounding cells. The energy that is gotten from food and all is broken down. So what is just important to know here is that the way water moves through the xylem is through the root osmotic pressure, through this transpiration pull that happens from the leaf, because water needs to leave this leaf by evaporation and cools the plant. So they take energy to draw up water. And then the last thing is the capillary action that we discussed. So three things that moves water. The other thing is the translocation of food. We have said food is made in the leaf. It has to be translocated down to every part of the of the plant cell, right? So what does this is the phloem. Remember, phloem, food. Xylem, water. It's very easy to remember. Phloem. Phloem sounds like F. Phloem, food, right? So this happens through the phloem vessels. Guys, thank you very, very much for watching today. Make sure that you download the Efiwe app, right? download the Efiwe app so that you can take your tests, questions, and practice with everything we have taught you, and even check corrections to those questions on the app. And also try to gather as much points as possible, because we reward people with Efiwe ambassadors. I'm so happy that you could finish this class. See you in the next class, and bye bye.